Good evening. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. We are here this evening, Monday, November 6th, 2023, for our hearing for the Larimer County Board of County Commissioners on our budget and also on our solid waste proposed fee schedule and budget. I am Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shai-McNally, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. Joining me this evening is my colleague, Larimer County Commissioner John Kafalis, and also our colleague Commissioner Stevens is excused. Joining us also on the other side of the room, we have our County Manager Lorenda Volker, and we have our Public Information Director Michelle Bird, and we have Matthew Bahanen, our Senior Budget Lead. All these new titles, and joining him is Alex Jordan, our budget analyst for Larimer County. And so thank you all for your work today. But first, we're going to go through and talk about our proposed fee schedule and budget. And this is going to be presented by Dwayne Penny, our Director of Solid Waste. So unless I'm missing another step here, Lorenda, are we just going to turn this over to Dwayne? Welcome, Dwayne. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dwayne Penny, and I'm the Director of Solid Waste for Larimer County. And I'm pleased this evening to go through the 2024 solid waste budget and 24 fee schedule. And Matthew is going to help me navigate through the slides. And our first slide will begin to talk about our 2024 revenue. And when we look at the 2024 projected revenue, the revenues are made up from landfill fees that we collect from landfill users. They're also from a transfer station. Estes Park brings their material to our landfill for disposal. We also have recycling fees, and we also have interest from our fund balance that is rolled up into that number, and that's 17 million is what we're projected for next year in revenue. So if we go to the next slide, this is a little bit more color in this slide, and the reason that we made it so colorful is when you look at the 2024 actual projected expenses, we put our expenses together in the same poll with different colors, and I would like to go through those. The gray under 2024 is our projected operating costs for the landfill and all of our services. It's roughly $11 million. The blue represents our funds that we're going to spend on the North Landfill to begin infrastructure development for our new facility. The next color is remediation and groundwater, and or groundwater remediation, and that is a project that is ongoing currently at the landfill, and we are budgeting $2 million for a proposed leachate collection evaporation pond. And then the orange would represent the new central transfer station that we're projecting to start building in the spring of next year, and that is $8 million. The very top green, that is our final closure cost. It's $1.5 million. That is actually in a different fund, but we show it because it is part of an expenditure. That green color, which represents closing a section of our landfill that is to final grade. There will never be any more material put on that area, and so we will cap it with clay and seed it, and that will be it for that portion of the landfill. Now, that fund is specifically for landfill closure and monitoring for the next 30 years. Commissioner Kapalis.
Oh, Commissioner? You have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dwayne. On this particular slide, the 2023 budget shows rather significant expenditures for the transfer station and the North Landfill, which did not, those expenditures, the construction did not occur So I'm wondering how that translates. Is that carried forward, or how does that work with the projected 2024 expenses?
Thank you. So the 2023 budget was also projected, and we did not spend those funds this year for the transfer station or the landfill. So those, even though they're just projected, they stay in the fund balance. And so those make up for our total fund balance, which I'll talk about that slide. So none of those dollars were exhausted this year. So it goes right back into the fund balance. There was no expenditure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I think moving on to the next slide, the next slide is our fund balance. And as of 2023, we have $55 million in the fund balance. And as we get into 2024, as I talked about with our expenditures, we'll begin to exhaust some of the funds out of the fund balance. And between the funds that we get from revenue and the funds from our fund balance, that will make up to 34 million that I was showing in the expenses. And so our fund balance will begin to start depleting in 2024. And as you see, it's starting to go down in 25, 26. That is us constructing the facilities.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner, you have a question?
I guess I need further clarification. So the fund balance for 2023 is 55 million projected. And I'm just trying to understand the expenses that are indicated for 2023 were for the transfer station and the North Landfill have not, other than some design components perhaps, but they've not been spent. So do they carry forward to 2024? And I'm seeing an increase in the fund balance of $3 million from 2022 to 2023. The arithmetic doesn't add up for me, so I'm sure I'm missing something. But the essence of my question is what we didn't spend on the landfill and on the transfer station in 2023. Is that reflected in the 2024 budget of the expenses for those two items?
Yes, it is, Commissioner.
Okay. Well, then that's that.
Well, and I can expand a little bit on the 52 million to 55 for 2023.
Thank you.
We received a increase this spring in our financials from a carryover from last year. So those 3 million, or that 3 million was deposited into the fund balance, which increased it from 52 to 55 million.
Thank you, Dwayne. I see that our director of budget planning and strategy, he knows me. He knows me well, so perhaps he can further explain things.
Welcome, Josh Fudge. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Josh Fudge, Director of Performance Budget and Strategy. What generally happens, especially in budgets with large capital expenses like this, is when the proposed budget comes out, there's probably still an assumption that the funds budgeted to be expensed for a capital project will occur this year. And then when we get to the adopted budget phase, we'll actually do more of a reconciliation. And so you'll probably see a reduction in capital costs in the landfill this year. We'll go back into fund balance, as Dwayne said, and then those expenses will be presumably carried out next year, and they may change again depending on the pace of construction. Does that help answer your question?
Josh, Madam Chair? Yes, that does help, Josh. Thank you. And before you go, though, does that mean that when we approved on November 15th the proposed 2024 budget and the revised 2023 budget, are these adjustments reflected in that?
Yes, it's scheduled for December 14th. But yes, if the budget is adjusted down for the landfill capital, you will see that in the revised 23 budget. And then the 23 actuals will end up even different from that. And the landfill will then update their fund balance again in early 2024 to reflect what actually happened.
Thank you, Josh. And again, not meaning to be critical, I just need to understand.
No,
Um,
thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Josh.
before either one of you go anywhere, since there's that money in the capital, in the fund, is it gaining interest? Does that also increase? Is that another reason for the increase from the 53 to 55? Is that interest earned and would the interest earned in that account stay in that account and not go into the general fund? Just curious. I'm assuming
Go ahead,
that.
sir.
That's correct. I believe the board policy for fund balance and interest in the landfill is that those funds do receive the interest earned. So you're right, by not spending them, they'll generate a little additional income. I don't know if the 23 updated budget includes, because interest revenue has been coming in far higher, of course, with higher interest rates. So I don't know if they've changed their budget to reflect that. But if not, and even if they have, it'll probably be updated again when you look at the final 23 revised budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, commissioners. If we move on to the next slide, please. So now we get into the landfill fees, and we are calling out 4 of our main categories here. And I'll hit the highlights of each one. One thing that I would really like to point out this year is if you look at the orange line for 2024, you will see that there is a change this year. We are going by the ton and start charging by the ton for compacted weight. We've been wanting to do this for a number of years, and we finally have all the pieces lined up to start doing it. So this will be a new year in 2024 for compacted to charge by the ton. The other waste streams will continue by the yard.
Yes, Commissioner Falls.
And I think I understand the logic behind that. For the sake of the public, what is the logic behind moving from charging by the cubic yard to the metric ton for compacted waste?
So when we move from compacted yard to the ton on compacted waste, it ensures that the vehicles coming into the landfill are paying for exactly what they have, because these are big trash trucks, and so you can't measure them. And so it works for both the customer and the county to weigh them so that we know exactly what we have.
That's what I assumed, that we were talking about commercial haulers and the big garbage trucks. And why are we doing this change now rather than in the past?
It is, there's a couple things that had to be done first. We needed to, first we've been evaluating it by the yard, and then we've been working on a conversion so that when we did make the conversion from cubic yard to by the ton, we wanted to make sure that we did an average of all of our compacted haulers so that everyone receives a fair rate when we convert, which we did, and it's $33 is a pretty good average per ton.
Thank you. One last question,
Yeah.
please. And presumably, we have informed the customers that will be impacted by this proposed change, or will be informing them.
Yes, we did. We've had our proposed prices on our website for a couple weeks, and we put this price sheet on the one that I'm going to talk about this evening, and we put it contingent on approval from county commissioners. But that way, everybody can begin to see what we're doing for price increases for the next year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dwayne. Well, please proceed.
So I think as we work through our different types of waste stream, one other thing to note is our commercial haulers, which is in the blue, the dark blue. We're at $12 a cubic yard, and we're going to go flat with that this year. We will not have an increase on our compacted, which makes up for about 100,000 of our 350,000 tons. And the reason for that is we've reached a pretty good point to where we feel like that's a good price to charge for that type of waste stream. And so getting into the next sheet, which is the actual pricing sheet, If you, there's a lot of columns on here, and it's hard to show pricing without having this sheet. But if you look at the yellow column to the right, and then just to the left, you have 2023 and 2024 prices. And the reason for that is we are having some, what I would say, very marginal price increases this year. And so we really started to look at the pricing by vehicle type. And so if we look, we have cars and pickups. We're going to go up $5 per vehicle. When we hit the green waste, in all three of our green waste categories, we're going to have a modest increase. And the reason is so that we are going to try and divert our green waste into more beneficial use with one of our partner companies that we're in negotiations with, so they can use it in their compost. The compacted, I went through that pretty well, and then the Rebel. Rebel is our heavier type of material, and shingles. Those are specific areas because they're really heavy, and so we're going to continue to have modest price increases on those two waste streams, and then our appliances and mattresses. We also are doing a small increase on the mattress program, and the reason is our program is extremely successful with recycling mattresses, but the cost of trucking are increasing slightly, and we are also preparing a better area for customers at the landfill, and so we're pretty happy with that.
Commissioner Foss, I see you have your hand raised.
I seem to be on a bit of a roll. Just for constructive discussion, I suppose I should know this, but why is it that in some categories or waste types a surcharge is included and others there is no surcharge?
So the waste streams where there is no surcharge, those we do not have to pay the state a solid waste user fee. And on the other waste streams, we are required to help fund the solid waste user fee, which is a program designed by the state to have landfill users charge a fee to users to help the solid waste program at the state level.
Thank you.
And then moving through the price sheet, the tires on our tires, we have a really good program with the tires. Matter of fact, most landfills in Colorado don't take tires. We're not allowed to put them in the landfill. But because we have a lot of residents and we continue our tire program, and we have a program where we can grind them up with our shredder and we can use them for daily cover, and the state is okay with that. And that helps take care of customers, with an alternative for disposing of tires.
Thank you, Dwayne. I know I enjoyed that part of the tour. We saw that part of the facility. So it's interesting that we can't just drop whole tires, but we can put that as the cover. And are we so that's good that we're able to do something. So how successful are we with the rims and some of the things that come with tires? Those are going into recycling as well. And so is that a separate charge, or how does that work with the rims and the metal that was in there?
So we do have a rim fee with the tire.
Okay.
And what we do is we purchased a machine called a rim derimmer, and it pushes the rim out of the tire in a safe manner. And then we put the rim inside of our metal recycling, and that way we can recover the metal.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think moving through the sheet, our convenience centers, we have two of them. They are going to see a modest increase. And then the last pricing sheet is Estes Park. Estes Park continues to haul to our landfill in transfer trailers. And so we oversee that operation. So We do have a small increase for cars and pickups, and then a really slight increase on loose waste and commercial waste. And then finally, our capital sheet for 2024. So I hit the highlights of this sheet. We're projecting about 24.9 million if we build everything and things go accordingly. And that pretty much is the highlights for our 2024 budget and fee schedule.
Thank you, Dwayne, for the presentation. I appreciate it. And so this, unless you have a question, Commissioner, do you mind if I ask my quick question?
Of course not. I'll pause for a moment.
Okay, thank you. You'll have to, my brain's starting to run out of gas here. So I'm curious, this is, all of these projects for financial year 2024, these are all projected for, and those are the, this is not the emerging technologies or some of those other opportunities that we have discussed. This is just for the site and also starting with the, well, I see the North Landfill discussion, but that would also depend on how those other negotiations and talks go with the other partners that we're potentially, hopefully, we're going to be finalizing those agreements with. Am I making sense? Sorry, I'm trying to get all my thoughts clear here.
Yes, Commissioner. So this represents our landfill expenditures for our new facilities and our current operations. The alternative facilities that we are in negotiations with, facility funding in most cases will be handled by the organization that we're negotiating with, and we will be in more of a supporting role, and those funds will begin to show up in 2025, and as we begin to work with them and hopefully get some of these projects going.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Commissioner Kofalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe I have any additional questions, so just to comment that I appreciate very much your thoughtful approach, your expertise, and your team. It looks like we have, if all goes well, we'll have close to $25 million of capital expenses, and that is focused primarily on our Tier 1 projects, which are the proposed new landfill, the North Landfill, as well as a modified transfer station. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct, Commissioner.
I greatly appreciate your succinct answers.
Well, thank you, and I can always elaborate if you wish.
No, I think we've had conversations about some of the details, and appreciate the ongoing discussions, and we'll keep moving ahead, because in the end, the current landfill has a life expectancy of perhaps another 2 years, and we need to take care of business.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dwayne. Great presentation. I appreciate all the work and the expertise that you've brought to our county and the work that you've done to build these relationships. I'm really excited about the future of this new landfill and the emerging technologies and what we're going to be able to do to close out the older landfill and also still have those activities on site. Really aligning with all of our goals still of diversion and being kind of a zero waste community. So I'm really excited about that. Appreciate this. So the only other question I have, as we look at these increases and some of these numbers and charges and fees, overall for this region, we are still kind of on average or below average for fees from other private landfills or other facilities in this area or this region?
We do a rate comparison with the other landfills in the market area, and we check pricing on all of our different waste streams, and we are still well below our competitors. in all areas. And we watch that fairly closely. And we do know that our competitors have the opportunity to do contracts. And so we don't always get to know exactly what the rates are. And so we compensate that through experience and judgment calls on our customers here in Larimer County.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So do we need to take a vote now to approve this rate schedule, or do we need to do it at the end, or?
You can do it however you'd like.
Let's go.
But we do have a comment.
Oh, okay.
So
Do we open this for public comment then? Do we want to, and then, okay, great.
So
Well,
this is
should I
the public
open,
hearing.
should I go ahead and open public comment, but should I go ahead and wait and see if there's anyone in the room first? And so I'll open public comment now. Is there anyone in the room that wishes to make public comment? Please indicate so. Okay, so now we'll move to online. So Michelle, please ask or hear the public comment.
Yeah, so it's more of a question than a comment, but you can respond how you want. Our viewer online would like to have a little more information on yard waste diversion. The exact comment was, can you comment more on yard waste diversion? That's all of it.
Okay, well, I'll ask that question since it's kind of, so public comment's supposed to be public comment, so I will ask the question for public comment. Could you elaborate more on yard waste diversion for our, are we assuming for our current or future landfill, I guess? Okay,
Okay. Yes, I would like to answer that question. So currently at the landfill, we take a lot of green waste, which is considered a yard waste. And we get quite a bit of it, several thousand tons a year from haulers that haul green waste themselves. And then our collection companies are moving towards doing more of yard waste collection in their routes. And I know that's happening already with some of the companies. And I know starting in September of next year, there will be another yard waste collection with the single hauler program at Port Collins. And so that program is going to expand. One of the things that we're doing at the landfill is we are evaluating organic waste management, and yard waste falls into that. And over the next few years, the state is, CDPHE, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, is moving towards trying to ban organic waste from landfills. And so we know there's a need, but we want to make sure that we can handle that material and divert it and put it to beneficial use so that it doesn't end up in the landfill. So these are all moving forward, all of these topics.
thank you.
So, and Madam Chair, you will actually vote on these at an upcoming admin
Oh, okay.
matters. What we're looking for tonight is questions. If you have
Questions,
concerns
okay.
about this, any follow-up we need to do. So we won't have to take a vote this evening.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I assume that's the only public comment you have, so we'll go ahead and close public comment for this portion of the hearing. And Dwayne, thank you for your work and your comments. Commissioner Kofalos,
Yes, I would like to make a closing comment, if I may.
certainly.
And that is, I appreciate the work that you and your team in the Solid Waste Department are doing. And I think what you've presented to us is striking a balance between looking out for the people we serve in Larimer County regarding cost to them for bringing their solid waste material to the landfill, as well as being mindful of increasing costs, and again, striking that balance between what we are charging the public and what the county's needs are in terms of increased costs for a variety of things. And so I think that's really important to make that point. And also, I don't know if you want to expand on this, Dwayne, but our commitment to diversion, is significant. And I know that with the Tier 2 proposed projects, and the negotiations that are occurring with various vendors who received were awarded the second RFP that we issued a year ago or so. Those discussions are going on, but ultimately, if they're successful, it'll put us in a good place for reaching the goal of perhaps by 2030 diverting 40%. I don't know if we've adjusted that goal, but diverting 40% of the material away from the landfill and into other purposes.
Yes, Commissioner, I would love to elaborate on that. And so our goal all along has been to find diversion organizations and projects that will work with our disposal costs. And disposal costs in Larimer County are relatively low to do both landfill disposal and diversion. And there's a cost to diversion. And one of the things that we're working really hard on and working with the county senior management and we're working really hard to find alternatives. And one of the things that we've come up with is we have 4 organizations that we think will all work and collaborate together. And our goal is to find ways to process the different waste streams, which is pretty much all of them, to process those waste streams, remove the valuable materials, and put them to use through composting, biochar, which produces a pure carbon, gasification, which produces renewable energy, and another company that has amazing technologies to sort all these materials. And so when we put all this together, the idea is to make sure that we produce byproducts that will actually pay a fee, which will help the processing, transportation, and handling fees. And when you put it all together and you make it all tie, you have a sustainable program. If you don't, then you end up having to subsidize programs and they fade away and they're not effective. So we're really working hard to make it a sustainable program for long-term for Larimer County and its residents.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Very appreciate your comments. And yes, that's the key, is that we are making this sustainable long-term for our residents to be good stewards of the taxpayer money, but also being good stewards of providing these services so that we can be good stewards of the planet and do what we can to be diversion. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And so I look forward to getting this approved, and I'm looking forward to all the changes that are happening over the next couple of years as we move into this really important phase of our older landfill getting ready to close, and then to the new one. So thank you.
You're welcome, Commissioner. And there's more to come on that topic.
I'm sure there is. It's a really, who knew that talking about solid waste is going to be so interesting? So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll move on to Matthew Bohannon, our senior budget team lead. Everyone's got a cup. So, well, it's great to have new titles. But I just wanted to say, maybe we can save all our questions till the end. And so we can get through the presentation, because
Thank you, Commissioner.
my sand dial is running low. So thank you.
Yeah, this is a presentation that you've seen before. We posted this online after the initial proposed budget was released on October 15th. There are 10,000 lines of accounts of budgets, revenues, and expenses, and so we'll try and summarize that into a cohesive narrative. Here's today's agenda. We'll walk through the budget calendar with some changes on that, potentially, depending on tomorrow's election. The fiscal factors surrounding the budget. We'll talk about the ballot items for this year and next. The key decisions around the budget. We'll give an overview of budget categories and then show a forecast of the general fund balance. And also, this meeting is a public hearing on the proposed budget, and we'll open it up for public feedback. So with budget calendar, budget season kicks off in the spring with a SWOT analysis. That's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is conducted by all the service categories, departments, and elected officials get together and they review what is impacting their programs. And then in May, you all set initial base budgets for the departments to build their budgets over the summer. The fall season is the review of those proposals and base budgets and decision-making at budget retreats, and the county manager meets with all departments to make recommendations, and that is put together into the proposed budget. So the 2024 proposed budget, that's the document that shows all the lines with all the numbers and all the changes. And that statutory deadline is October 15th. That's when the proposed budget has to be submitted and posted for public review. And then October 18th, we had our work session. That's where you saw this presentation for the first time. Throughout the fall and summer and fall, we've had community conversations as well. And today, November 6th, is the public hearing. Tomorrow is a big day because of the property tax ballot item Proposition HH. After we know the result of that proposition, we will have a retreat at sometime in mid-November to either confirm or adjust final decisions for the adopted budget. When we get into December, if Prop HH passes, that changes the timeline on some certifications. So if Prop H does not pass, we will continue and have the budget adoption and set the mill levies on December 14th. If Prop HH passes, we will adopt the budget on December 14th, but potentially push back the adoption of the mill levies to January 10th, which would be before the deadline to certify the levies. And that's because there are new property classifications and requirements for the assessor's office, and they would need more time to complete that under Prop HH. So 2023 budget to 24, you're going to see some fiscal factors. The budget is actually decreasing by quite a lot, and that is because in 23 we are spending and completing major capital projects. So the four you see up here on the screen, they will all be done in 23 and no longer be budgeted in 24. Another factor is just the inflationary environment that we're in. Double-digit increases year over year for many years in technology, in construction of facilities and roads, the cost of steel. The labor market has continued to be difficult to hire in. The survey data on compensation is coming back high. And then also unfunded mandates from the state for new requirements in public safety and elections, floodplain engineering review, permitting. It's just a high-cost environment, and you've seen that over the years with all the requests that have come in.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring that up because I think Lorenda says this a lot, that it used to be $1 million per mile to pave roads, and now it's like $2.5 million. So it's really has increased recently. Thank you, Dwayne.
So the two property tax ballot items that have impacted this year's budget, Proposition HH and Initiative 50, these both have impacted our budget process because they deal with property taxes, our largest revenue source. And so to respond to those items, we instituted a hiring freeze under your direction from June until August. And then we also asked all departments to submit, all departments funded by property taxes to submit $7 million in total reduction proposals. And so $2 million of those are included in the 2024 proposed budget, which assumes that HH does pass because our deadline to submit that was before tomorrow's election, obviously, before we know the outcome of it. So I won't read through every single reduction. You've seen these before. These are all in the proposed budget document online. But I will say that the reductions were not painless. It was some belt tightening that had to be done. There were no layoffs associated with these reductions, but they impacted all service areas, public safety, human services, down the line. We also had service proposals. We had $18 million in requested increases to base budgets. And so this shows, I think, the need out there in the departments and in the elected offices just for the increase in their demand on services. $18 million seems like a lot, but in reviewing all the requests, they were all well justified and documented and backed up. But only $3.5 million of the $18 million in requested service proposals were included in the 2024 proposed budget.
And I'll add there that about, I think, $2.5 million roughly of that were increased in medical costs at the jail and food expenses. So those are not necessarily new services. It was just a a more expensive cost to provide the same service.
Yeah, and here is the list of those, and you can see there's one, we'll call out Proposition HH. This would be to implement the classification for the 2025 requirement to identify secondary and primary home ownership. And then, as our county manager mentioned, here's some huge increases in just the cost of doing business, insurance for the sheriff's office deputies, and then jail, food, and medical contract costs. And this full list is also on the website in the proposed budget document. Some highlights of unfunded requests. The district attorney's office, there's the largest one here, has been seeing increases in domestic violence cases. And so there's a request to fund a 3-person prosecution team, a victim advocate, a prosecutor, and an investigator. This is the type of thing that was well-founded, well justified, but just the budget is not there as of yet. And there's others, and you've seen these. We went through these at the budget retreat. Okay, to review some of the larger categories, we're going to go through revenues first, then expenses, property taxes, and assessments. So the 2024 increase over 2023, this would be subject to the Proposition HH revenue growth cap of 8% plus new construction. And it also includes Foothills Gateway property tax mill levy, which was voter approved and therefore not subject to the cap, and then also improvement district property taxes, which the county budgets for, but administers depending on where you live. You'll have road improvements related to that, and those are not subject to the cap as well. So that's the 12% increase. Sales use and other taxes. This has been seeing, if you recall over the years, double-digit increases year over year with the growth in spending and the high inflation. That's coming to an end. We've seen a slowdown from 2023 over 2022. So we're forecasting a 2% increase, which is below the state Northern Colorado forecast from the state economist. So that it is an increase, but the huge double-digit sales tax growth is kind of coming to an end. The intergovernmental revenues are down 16%. This is largely due to a decline or the end of the COVID recovery federal grant money in the health department and in the disaster recovery fund. Licenses and permits. This is due to a one-time solid waste. It was recorded as a permit from the solid waste fund to the road and bridge fund to pay for part of the North Landfill. There were some road improvement projects related to that capital project. Charges for services, this would be at the ranch, natural resources, seeing an 8% increase. Interest earnings, we've had large fund balances and higher interest, and so these are way up from 2023 adopted, and are expected to continue to grow into 24. Internal and other revenues declining largely due to the end of those capital projects, so the transfers from like the general fund to the building fund, those are going away with the close of those projects. Expense categories, personnel, we've talked about a little bit. The compensation study that Human Resources does every year came back and they recommended a 2% increase in market, so all the salary ranges, and then a 3% increase in merit, which happens if you receive a favorable review on your anniversary date year. So that budget's not a full 3%. We call it county math. 1.5% of that is budgeted. And then in the operating line, that is decreasing by 10%, largely due to the end of capital projects. And the bulk of the end of the capital projects happens in the capital outlay category. Certificates of participation, this is the the financing for the jail improvement project, and that'll continue through 2033, I believe is the year. That was a 15-year financing term. And then other financing uses, that category is also declining because of the end of the capital projects again. So that's a broad overview. The budget's going to be $610 million, which is a significant decrease from the 2023 revised budget. So with the general fund balance projection, this is the forecast that we will often show at budget review meetings and budget retreats. The forecast, we want it to be above 10% of annual recurring expenses or below 20% of annual recurring expenses. That's about the target in our budget policy that we want to hit. And so that indicates a structurally balanced general fund budget where our revenues are covering our expenses on an ongoing basis. And there are a lot of assumptions that go into it, and we've got this partly cloudy forecast icon to really kind of tell the story of the economy is looking okay, but there is still uncertainty out there, especially with property tax legislation. And so you can see here's our forecast, and it is structurally balanced thanks to the decisions that were made around reductions and limiting the amount of service proposals that were approved. So public feedback has been extensive. We've had listening sessions, community conversations here in Fort Collins, Loveland, Wellington, Red Feather Lakes. We're conducting a community survey that will be statistically significant. We had some budget questions there. The American Rescue Plan Act funding stream has had monthly work sessions about how that funding should be allocated. And tonight we have our proposed budget hearing. We'll open it up to the public, and then finally a budget adoption hearing on December 14th, as I mentioned. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. We've got all the details here on Alex's laptop.
Thank you, Matthew. Great job. And yes, you're right. We have this is for the public's knowledge. This is an abbreviated presentation because we've had many sessions on this. And so I just want to thank you for the work and making this concise for this evening. I have a couple questions, but I'll go ahead and let my colleague go first. Commissioner Gonzalez.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. I just want to, quick question I have is on page 19 with the projected general fund ending balance. Because people look at that and think, oh, well, you must be okay with if HH passes or, doesn't. But this is, I want to be clear for the public to understand, this graph here shows this after the budget reductions that we just listed. This is because we have to submit a proposed budget. So this is after those reductions.
Yeah. And I'll clarify that this does not include any recession of any significance, no decline in property values, and also no disasters. And that's why you want to have a fund balance, is for those types of things.
And then we still have a lot of budget legislative uncertainty. So I know we have that little bit of increase in 2029 with certain metro districts, or not yet metro districts, urban mineral authorities retire in Loveland and Timnath. And but that's not really projected here because there's a little uncertainty how HH, if it passes or doesn't pass, impacts whether or not we're able to finally, after over 2 decades of not receiving that and that going to the developer, there might be some uncertainty whether we're able to collect that as well. Is that correct?
Correct. So this forecast, like the proposed budget, is assuming that Proposition HH does pass, and there are some exceptions to the revenue growth cap, but the expiration of tax increment financing districts is not one of those exceptions. And so that revenue, which was expected to be about $10 million a year starting in around 2030, would not come back to the county at that time. It would be subject to the cap like all other revenues, yeah.
Which I don't think was an intended consequence of that. So I'm thinking that I've heard from legislators that they'll consider
Yeah.
that, but
And there could be a
that's-
fix. And
could be a fix, but that's, well, I'll know tomorrow. And it's hasn't happened unless it's going to get passed. But that money has been it's been diverted away from the county 100% for over 2 decades. So that would be a shame that finally, after all this time, we're not able to, because it wouldn't really be an increase. It's just we finally be receiving it instead of other folks. So, okay. I don't think I have any other questions. I do appreciate your thoroughness. And so I'll open it for public comment and see if we have anyone who'd like to ask questions or has public comment. So first I'll ask if there's anyone in the room who would like to make public comment. Seeing none, I will go over to Michelle. Michelle, do we have anybody from the public who'd like to make a public comment at this time online?
We don't have any online comments, Commissioner.
Okay. I'll just give it another couple of seconds, and then I guess we'll just go ahead and close public comment. But that doesn't mean that's not the last. We've had some great sessions. We had some excellent sessions where we had some outside experts come and present, and I think they did a fantastic job. I'm just always sad that more people don't come and participate. We had some excellent feedback from those who did participate, that they learned a lot and were very impressed with the presentation. So I'm always wishing more people came to those. But with that, I think we've had lots of opportunities, and so we'll close public comment. And I guess that's all that we have for this evening is this public hearing, because we'll wait for tomorrow for Election Day, have our retreat, and then we'll have our final adjustments and have that public hearing and approve that budget. So with that, at 6:53, I believe we have concluded our business for this evening. We are adjourned. Thank you.